He assists Turning Point USA groups and conservative activists to launch new chapters, to organize daily campus activism initiatives, recruit activists, help students to vote, and develop strong conservative activists across North Carolina. Coleman currently oversees 30 student groups in North Carolina, and Turning Point USA has a presence on over 1,500 college and high school campuses and has a mission to help enlighten young people to the values of limited government, fiscal responsibility, and American exceptionalism. Welcome.
So I will say the first thing, it's great to be in a room with people who are actually excited to see me. I go to campus every day, and typically over-under is about 10 minutes on. I get somebody to come up to me and yells, "Hey, fascists, get off this campus." So if y'all haven't heard of Turning Point USA before, I'll kind of explain a little bit to you first. So basically what we do is we work with high school and college students to just kind of promote the ideas of freedom in a constitutional republic. We don't do anything like the party stuff, so we find it a lot easier, and what our founder kind of envisioned was that it's easier to talk to young people about politics outside of the party lines. And when it comes to us talking about constitutional rights, these are issues that aren't really like Republican or Democrat. These are things that people should be supporting. So with Turning Point USA, that's kind of what we do, and kind of just basically like, best way to describe it is kind of like a slight red pill in the right direction, since unfortunately, as you've seen even now in high school, administrations on college and high schools are very, very liberal. But most students are not. Most students are very apathetic to just basically politics because they don't really know how to get involved. They don't know what they actually believe in because they haven't spent time to do it. And they basically go along with whatever their professor or teacher tells them is correct. And they don't challenge it. So at least with what Turning Point, we try and provide like a different view for students to just kind of be a part of. And the amount of like backlash that we do sometimes get is kind of a little bit crazy. I'll give you guys 3 examples that's happened in the past 2 semesters. I had a professor walk up to my table, Turning Point, like we don't take a stance on abortion, but decided to talk to me about abortion. Said that abortion is better than adoption because the kid's gonna grow up to be not successful anyways. As somebody who's an adopted from Russia, I can tell them that's not true. Second thing that was told, this was told to me last week by a student. The only thing that matters is the color of your skin.
Oh, that's racist.
Exactly. That's what I thought, but I guess the colleges are teaching something else. The third thing, this one happened at Western Carolina. This one's a little bit more authoritarian, which actually kind of scared me. They threatened to, what's the best way to say this? They threatened to surround us in a circle while we were tabling and shouted at us for 4 hours until we left.
Freedom of speech.
That happened at Western. So with this, most of these are college examples, but it's also in the high schools too. So with Turning Point, kind of what we kind of do is kind of show people like, not all college students are liberal. Trust me, they're not. And we do a lot of different activism events and bring speakers to campus. Thursday this week, I had a lot of fun smashing a car with Karl Marx's face on it with a sledgehammer. We had an event at Western Carolina where we had a car privately donated, brought it to campus, and people could just beat it. Like, had like Karl Marx on it, had, let's see, what else did they throw in it? They had like a few, they had like, drew like bullet points on it, about why socialism sucks, and the idea is basically smashing socialism. We also do things like free speech balls where we blow up a giant 15 inflatable beach ball and they can write whatever they want on it. And these are just some of the activism events that we kind of do to just basically kind of tell students like, these issues that we're talking about, you should support. Because if they go, then you're not going to have any freedom left. And that's what I started to see, especially with the vaccines and especially with the mask mandates. When we started a petition back in beginning of February across the whole UNC board, just kind of like, since we have chapters, I'm proud to say now, we have chapters on every single public UNC system college. Finally got the last one, UNC Asheville this week. We did a whole campaign across every single campus to get rid of the mask mandate, and I really think that we had a huge impact on the administration because in 3 weeks, across the entire UNC system for students, we had 10,000 signatures. And this is just some of the stuff that we've kind of really been working on, because especially with students, like, number one thing that changes their mind from liberal to conservative, you tell them, hey, do you like being told what to do? They're probably going to say no. Second thing I go with, do you think government actually cares about you? They're like, no, then why do you want to make it bigger? Very common sense stuff. And then they start thinking about it, like, oh, that crazy person that's sitting there in the jacket is not actually stupid. And then at least there have been some cases where we have gotten denied a lot of cases with administrations. If you haven't ever talked to anybody that works in college administrations, I think they're the most brain dead human beings on the face of the earth. It takes 3 weeks for them to email me back. I really don't even know if they know how to work their email. And that they don't know what they're talking about. They make up rules every time I talk to them, and they make my life very hard to do anything productive on campus. So with 3 things that have happened, is anybody from like Western Carolina? There's a lot that has happened up there, so that's going to be a lot of what I refer back to. Western Carolina University, and this is a Fox News story, you guys can go ahead and look this up afterwards. We just did a campaign because they had segregated spaces on campus. They also had mandated RA trainings about this thing called the gender unicorn. Not everybody's 100% straight, not everybody's 100% gay. This whole intersectionality thing was mandated that people had to partake in to teach and be an RA on campus. We were able to put this on Fox News and get a story out there, and 2 good things happened with it. The faculty of the university decided to mock us and create t-shirts that said Woke Carolina University. After that, we received death threats from students on the university's campus, about 35 in the span of 48 hours towards our members of the chapter. After that happened, and the chancellor decided not to comment on it, it very quickly made its way to the State House. And I can't thank, if anybody knows Representative Hardisser for helping us with the situation, he was able to get the chancellor of the university to sit down and change the policies. They're no longer mandated at Western Carolina University. And because of this whole thing, and because of all the activism we did there, we also were able to pull, I believe, about $5 million of private funds from the university because of this. That's one of the more successful stories, like I kind of had about just stuff that we're doing in here. I have one that's probably a little bit more disturbing. So is anybody familiar with Audrey Kell High School? You ever know where that is? It's a school, one of the biggest high schools in the state, south of like Charlotte, like right on the border between like South Carolina and North Carolina. We decided to try to start the Turning Point chapter. I had some students that were very excited about it. We're just kind of sick of how their school is, and just basically pushing their agenda. They decided to deny our charter because they considered it a disruption to the learning community. This particular school also has a chapter dedicated to people that wear dog collars and walk students around with leashes. And that is not disturbing to the learning community. I really don't know what administrators are really thinking of these things at this point. So that is one of the things that we're working on changing, at least with Audrey Kell and the Mecklenburg County School District. Like, we're working with the Moms for Liberty in the area as well to kind of just get some like news out about this, because this is a little disturbing. And then for the last one, I kind of have like at least like terrible story. At least is anyone familiar with High Point University? Yes. Don't they say that, like, I'm sure most of you guys have heard High Point is a very conservative school. Maybe it's like one of the most safe havens other than Liberty University for like to send students to at least not become indoctrinated. It's not really the case. We've been working for 1.5 years to get our chapter approved, and it keeps getting denied. This is the 5th time. And this is because of the administration. When it comes to the indoctrination, it is there in even places you don't expect. I remember, and that's why when it comes to conservatives, making sure people are conservative, when it comes to these groups, is very critical. Because we had the college Republicans of High Point basically call us racists on campus because they wanted to align with the Black Lives Matter of the campus. And that's part of the reason our charter didn't get approved, at least on that campus. And we just wanted to bring a speaker on the campus to talk about critical race theory. They said that was racist. Don't know how the two correlate. And the last thing I kind of touch on, and then I'll kind of open up to Q&A, is critical race theory. It is here. I get terrible calls from students about, honestly every day at this point, just about things that they are teaching in schools. 3 weeks ago, I had a 2nd grader. She never involved in politics. I never even knew what politics was in 2nd grade. She reached out to me through Turning Point's website, and she told me that she had to say that Black Lives Matter in class. Another one is that they're forcing, I remember this one was the worst one, they had to pledge allegiance to the gay flag. These things are happening in North Carolina. Critical race theory is here, and I thank God that we have Mark Robinson backing us up, at least in that case. Thank God. And if you guys are interested in love him, he's speaking to our UNC Greensboro chapter for you to attend as well. I'll plug my event right there. We're also doing it with our first chapter in the state at an HBCU at NCAT, so they will also be hosting it as well. And the last thing touch on, then I'll open to Q&A, how to kind of get involved, at least with Turning Point. Obviously, we're very heavily youth focused, but we have so many great things that are coming out. We have national conferences that you guys can attend. America Fest was our most recent one. We just had 10,000 people. We actually beat CPAC, which I was so happy about. Even though I've been to CPAC a bunch of times, but we beat them this year. We had 10,000 Patriots come out in December to Phoenix, Arizona. A couple of ones that we have coming up. If you know any high school, college females, we have our Young Women's Summit coming up in Dallas, Texas, June 2nd through the 4th. We're expecting about 2,500 and expecting to break the record for women's political conference attendees. So we're expecting that one. That one's going to be the 2nd to the 4th. Talk to me afterwards. And then the last one we have upcoming is our Student Action Summit that's open to all students in high school, college. We also have adult tickets, so if you ever wanted to see what Turning Point was about, we also have those available as well. And that one's going to be July 21st through the 24th, and we're expected to have 6,500 people there for this conference. Our conferences are the best in the business, and basically anybody you can think of we've had speak at a conference. We have Trump. I've been begging them to get Mark to speak for about 3 years now. I'm hoping that they finally do it this time. But at least with that, and then the little upcoming events that we have here, outside of Mark Robinson coming on the 19th, we also have Brandon Tatum, if anybody's familiar with him. He's going to be speaking at NC State, also free to the public, and the tickets are on Eventbrite. So all you have to do is type in Turning Point at NC State, and it'll come up. But other than that, does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Coleman, when are you going to have your Hispanic Youth Summit, and what's the plan to reach the Hispanic youth in this country?
So at least with Hispanic youth, one of the things that we've done, at least actually started 2 years ago, is we have the activism kits, and we've been reaching out to, and they're all in Spanish, because we have noticed, especially with the Hispanic community, they are more conservative. They have the family values aspect. So one of the things that we're starting up, and I believe we're starting in August, is trying to have Hispanic reps similar to what I do, because we already have reps specifically for HBCUs. We're going to have Hispanic reps of trying to get chapters started in communities and try to get more people involved that way.
What do you think of a policy like the daylight savings time policy that just came up that everybody can get behind?
What, getting rid of it?
Yeah, I was just using that as an example. What's
Actually,
the policy?
They're proposing to make it universal.
Right.
Always daylight savings year round.
So what I'm asking, what is the policy that you think of that everyone can get behind like that policy?
So at least when it comes to when I go to college campuses, you may be surprised to hear this, but the number one thing that convinces liberals to join the club, at least for on campus, is actually guns. The Second Amendment is actually a lot of things that is an issue that a lot of liberals actually do support, which actually surprised me. When I first started doing campus work, I was like, guns, like, okay, this is like a little bit more out there. I'd kind of like say like, oh, we just do constitutional rights. I didn't just say, hey, do you love guns? But I noticed like with a lot of people on campus, what they started to notice is that the administrations were starting to tell them how to live their lives. And with college students, like I said, number one talking point, I don't like being told what to do. So guns was actually one of the issues that I noticed that was like, at least for college students specifically, and even high schoolers, that even liberals got behind. Like I even had like communists and socialists agree with me on the fact that we should support our Second Amendment rights. So I'd say probably for that, focusing more on guns, because with it, everybody, like the number one thing I talk to when I talk to the LGBT community that actually our App State chapter is actually half LGBT, is the Pink Pistols, if anybody's familiar with them. They are an all LGBT gun gap secured, and they do a lot of good work, and they're actually going to be doing a training with our App State chapter soon. Oh. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for what you are doing. It's excellent job. I like youth because young youth generation is engine of society. If they say it, they do it. If they do it, we succeed. So I'm interested, how can we use students or others for our campaign? I'm looking, even I was planning to go to state universities to political science students or others to ask them. So what is your experience on that?
So the best advice I have, at least for like trying to get like students like to get involved with like either a state party or just campaigns in general, like they want experience. And like the big thing when it comes to it, and one of the things I drill into my students like all the time is the idea of like your degree, it matters to an extent, but people are going to look more at like what kind of activism and what type of involvement you had during college more than they're going to look at your GPA. So with it, the best way to kind of like talk to different like groups and especially students, if you want them to like be a part of it, offer them internships. Like I have students like every day asking me like, hey, like do you know of any internships like coming up or any campaigns I can get involved with? So talk to me afterwards. I can definitely help like at least talking to some of y'all. I have some students in the area that would be interested in being involved. And like at least with talking to like trying to convince them to like support you, the best kind of advice I have at least for that is find an issue that they agree with. Like normally college students have a lot of weird out there opinions. I was the exact same when I was in college. So kind of like find some issue that you can agree with them on. It's kind of the best issue I have in like talking to them is like, even like a socialist, for example, one of the things that like made like Bernie Sanders says a lot is like, we want companies to pay their fair share in taxes, like for example. Finding like for us, like we actually support a free market. So we don't want giant companies getting bailouts and special favors. So kind of like that going along with the free market is how I can convince somebody who's like a Bernie Sanders supporter to actually say like, oh, these people actually have a fair point and I can agree with them on something.
Thank you.
Do you guys have a campaign to educate the alumni or boosters of these universities to deal with the administrations? Because you mentioned about the $5 million being pulled. And I'm sure a lot of these alumnus and boosters aren't aware of what's going on at these universities. And so they're educated, and then it might lead to them having a discussion about the financial piece of it that they're donating to their universities. As they say, money talks, right? So it may get the administration to change their viewpoint or change some of their policies.
Yes, like one of the things our advancement team has actually started to work on over the past couple of years is finding people who donate to Turning Point and then finding which university they attended so they can support like individual chapters, or if they find out like, hey, my university supports segregated spaces on campus, I'm gonna pull my funds. So that's one of the things that we're working on, and the biggest thing that we kind of do with it is news stories. We work pretty closely with another organization, Leadership Institute, with Campus Reform, and kind of just get student stories out there, because some of the stories, like I remember when I was in, the worst thing that ever happened to me in college was I got assaulted by Antifa when I was putting up posters to promote our event. And luckily, like I was able to press the safety button because I kind of like got jumped by like 3 people, like out of the bushes.
Wow.
Any,
So you addressed the question about the Latin outreach that you're doing, and my biggest focus has been on breaking down barriers and stereotypes, because as we know, a lot of people that we typically don't think of as conservatives are very conservative. So another aspect you touched on was the LGBTQ community, transgender, what have you. I mean, that's, to me, that's been name of God, but is there conservatives at heart, and so do you have an outreach there at all? Are you thinking about that?
yeah, so at least when it comes to like talking to like that specific community, we don't have like, because with Turning Point, we typically like just try to stay away from, you know, the identity politics thing, at least when we're recruiting on campus. But at least when it comes to, it's kind of going back to the same thing I kind of touched on earlier. There's always something that you can agree with somebody on. Just trying to find that one thing, like whether it be guns, First Amendment, privacy from the government doesn't have your best interest, whatever that issue is, whoever you're talking to, that's the best way to really kind of get them to start thinking the other way. Like, at least with the LGBT, the biggest thing, like, at least when I talk to them about, is talking to them about guns. That's typically the best thing, and that really honestly does make a difference, especially like when it comes to us as conservatives. We just want people to live their lives free, let them do what they want. So talking about issues of like supporting their freedom is the best way to kind of convince people of it. So with our advocacy group, like one of the things like we do is we have like, it's actually my favorite button. I think it's out there on the table. They have like a little rainbow flag and it has a gun on it, and kind of like supporting like the LGBT right to own guns.
Well, thank you for what you do, and I encourage everybody in the room to think outside the box, so thank you for being here.
Do we still have time?
One more question.
Let's do one more.
One more? Okay.
I wondered about the ROTC students on campus. Are they approachable, and are you involved with them in any way?
I love to be involved with RTC students. We do have some that are involved. It is a little bit more tricky. Actually, the reason I actually ended up not going to officer training school was because of the fact that I couldn't really be involved with politics and it being the uniform, so it makes it a little bit tricky. But when they're out of uniform, like I believe my App State chapter, a lot of them are involved with the Air Force ROTC up there, so like they just have to play a little bit special role, because if they're in uniform, they can't talk to me, unfortunately.
Individually, but not the group.
Yeah.
Can I ask one last question? You
Yes.
mentioned you were adopted from the former Soviet Union. What do you tell people that say, oh, American socialism is different than communism?
I tell them the reason I'm sitting here in front of you is because of my family's experience. So for me, I was adopted from Russia when I was a kid because my parents couldn't afford to feed me due to the fall of the Soviet Union. I still keep in contact with my birth family. Luckily, I was able to reach out to them, and I actually found them 3 years ago. Thank God for the internet. Facebook's such a great thing sometimes. So I have actually talked to them, and like some of the stories that they're telling me, at least about what has really happened under the Soviet Union, is also part of the reason why I did Russian studies and read every book that Karl Marx wrote when I was in college. Because if you don't understand this stuff, you can't argue against it. And it's also, for me, it's kind of like my privilege card of like, hey, I'm from Russia. My family experienced socialism. You do not want anything to do with it. Like, the same person that I told you about earlier that said that the only thing that matters is the color of your skin was the same one that said she was a communist and was from Zimbabwe. Do some history research, get back to me, and let me know how socialism and communism worked out for Zimbabwe.
All right. Thank you very much.